Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Somali humanitarian organization makes urgent plea for aid. Obama urged to probe Bush torture claims as secret prison details emerge. And main opposition group pulls out of Bahrain's national dialogue. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
Displaced Somali citizens continue to pour into neighboring countries, especially Kenya and Ethiopia. The refugees say aid has not arrived to the refugee camps in the city of Dadaab, located along the Somalia-Kenya border.
The Somali capital, Mogadishu, is witnessing a mass influx of people affected by the drought and famine in the south of the country who hope to receive humanitarian aid. However, the amount of aid has not met the level of hardship caused by the absence of an effective role by international relief organizations.
Joining us in the studio is Shaib Abdul-Latif Sheikh, director of the Zamzam charitable organization in Somalia. Mr. Shaib, the United Nations warned about the condition of Somali refugees. How serious is the situation?
To start with, I would like to thank you. Of course, the situation in the Horn of Africa in general, and in Somalia in particular, is very serious, much more dangerous than people imagine. This is the fourth year that the region has witnessed severe drought and rain scarcity. For this reason, most people, in reality, are enduring a tragic situation. We have offices on the ground in Somalia and Kenya. We see people fleeing their villages and cities and heading towards the unknown. For example, in the capital Mogadishu, there are thousands, or rather hundreds of thousands of refugees who are arriving to the city on a daily basis, but can't find the means for a living. In truth, the situation is very difficult. In order to imagine what the situation in Somalia is like, consider that the main sources of national income in the country are livestock and agriculture. Both depend on water, so it is very hard.
Yes, it sounds like the situation is very dangerous. What about international aid? How would you evaluate it?
International aid so far has been scarce. It would not be an exaggeration to say that there has been very little aid. Until now, there is no serious plan to help the refugees.
Why is that?
In truth, there are many justifications. International organizations claim there are security conditions, and they say there is a shortage of funding. However, we know there is aid sitting in storages in Mogadishu, while people are dying of hunger inside Mogadishu.
If the situation continues as is, what are its implications for the region as a whole? The Horn of Africa is currently enduring the worst case of drought witnessed in decades.
The situation is unimaginable. This is the fourth year of continued drought. As I said, people depend on livestock and agriculture. All of their livestock, or most of it, has died. For this reason, people's lives now depend on what international organizations offer. So far, these organizations have not made a serious plan to help these refugees. So from here, from the Al Jazeera platform, we send an appeal to international, Arab, and Muslim organizations and to UN agencies to lend a helping hand to these refugees who have no daily subsistence.
For years, Bush critics have demanded a prosecution of the former U.S. president. Human Rights Watch just recently has again asked for his prosecution for the crimes of torture, abductions, abuses committed against prisoners in Iraq, to name a few. In this edition of the News Analysis, we ask, what will it take to bring U.S. officials to justice, a country whose record of direct and indirect involvement in torture and killings has been unmatched by any other nation since at least World War II.
In a report called Getting Away with Torture, Human Rights Watch has cited substantial information that warrants criminal investigations of ex-US President George W. Bush and other former senior American officials. They include former Vice President Dick Cheney, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, and CIA Director George Tenet. The rights group says overwhelming evidence of torture obliges the Obama administration to order a criminal investigation into detainee abuse perpetrated when Bush was in power. The major torture practices in question are waterboarding, the use of secret jails, and transfer of detainees to other states. Human Rights Watch has further advised other countries to prosecute culpable U.S. officials if the White House fails to address the issue itself.
We want the Obama administration to investigate more, not just those interrogators who went beyond what was authorized, but the authorization of the use of techniques that amounted to torture themselves.
But as Human Rights Watch was warning the U.S. against failing to probe the Bush-era abuses, American media gave a detailed account of the Obama administration's own secret facilities in the drought and violence-hit Somalia. Descriptions revealed by The Nation magazine matched those of Bush-era prisons in other countries. The magazine says the CIA is operating a secret facility in Somalia for so-called counter-terrorism purposes, as well as a secret prison in the Somali capital Mogadishu, where suspects are held and likely abused.
Obama administration just announced a few weeks ago that they basically wanted to close the chapter on this era. Made Human Rights Watch and other groups concerned that this issue can't go away, that it's very important that the administration make clear that not only is it prohibited to use torture, but also it's important that the crimes actually be prosecuted, and that's an obligation under the Convention Against Torture and also U.S. domestic law.
It's still ironic that Human Rights Watch is asking the United States to investigate past abuses while the CIA continues to build secret prisons abroad. And why the rights group does not send its, quote, overwhelming evidence to the UN and other international organizations for investigation remains another mystery.
The Arab League's new Secretary General has held talks with a Syrian president and senior officials on the latest developments in the Arab world, particularly the unrest in Syria. Here's more on that.
In his first visit to Syria since assuming the Arab League Secretary General, Nabil al-Arabi met Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus for talks on the latest developments in the Arab world. The two sides agreed on enhancing work within the framework of the Arab League to find solutions to Arab issues. Al-Arabi also met Syrian Vice President Farouk al-Sharaf for similar talks. Speaking to reporters after the two meetings, the high-ranking Arabian official expressed rejection of any foreign interference in Syria's affairs and said the country is undergoing a genuine reform process.
No foreign country or the Arab League has the right to interfere in another country's internal affairs, and the Syrian leadership has a genuine desire in achieving reforms in the country.
The AL Secretary General called on all ambassadors to respect diplomatic norms and laws, saying that no state has the right to interfere in another country's affairs. The U.S. and French ambassadors to Syria made unauthorized visits to the city of Hama on Friday. The Syrian government said the visit's goal is fomenting tensions in Syria.
Al-Arabi's visit aims to support reforms that Syria witnesses, and it comes to correct the stance of the Arab League towards the country, as it reflects the rejection of any foreign interference in Syria's internal affairs.
The Arabian official arrived in Syria on the second stop of his tour to some Arab countries, after his stop in Saudi Arabia. Analysts believe that Al-Arabi's visit to Syria is a clear support to the reforms Syria is undergoing these days to end the crisis in the country.
Bahrain's Al-Wifaq National Islamic Society pulled out of the dialogue sessions after a participant made sectarian statements. The society said that it is considering a complete withdrawal from the dialogue. It called on a number of participants to respect human rights in Bahrain and honor all the international human rights charters that Manama has signed.
قبل كل جلسة لمؤتمر الحوار في البحرين
The streets of Bahrain precede every session of the dialogue conference with these slogans expressing their rejection to outmaneuvering their demands in any way, even with the so-called dialogue. They insist on achieving their goals for which the popular uprising began. Their goals include conducting real political reform, releasing detainees, and punishing those who committed crimes against protesters. The dialogue continued for the 6th day after witnessing dramatic events caused by Representative Jassim al-Saidi, who described the Shiite Muslim sect as naturalized rejectors during discussions of naturalization issues. His comment caused resentment among the participants. Al-Wifaq National Islamic Society's delegation immediately walked out of the dialogue session, saying that it had no desire to enter a sectarian polemic instigated by certain participants. In reaction to the belittling comments directed at the Shiite Muslim community, which accounts for the majority of the Bahraini population, Al-Wifaq National Islamic Society is considering completely pulling out of the dialogue conference, according to the announcement by the head of the society's delegation, Khalil al-Marzouk. Marzouk said that the dialogue is not a serious one. He said that his delegation participated in the dialogue with sincerity and exerted serious efforts to modify its procedures, mechanisms, and approaches, but was ignored and rejected. He stressed the importance of avoiding anything that portrays Al-Wifaq Society as a participant in the dialogue if the dialogue leads to outcomes far from the people's will or even against it. The focus of discussions on the 4th day of the dialogue was the electoral system, which included the proposed comprehensive electoral procedures and constituencies. Several participants in the dialogue disapproved of the current constituency division in the electoral system, considering it unfair and the cause of the political crisis in the Bahraini society. The second focus of discussions was the relations between naturalization and its applicable system. A group of participants in the dialogue supported the right of naturalization and the current naturalization system. Another group vouched for the necessity to amend the naturalization law and system in the framework of responding to the development demands in Bahrain. A third group asserted that the current naturalization system was applied out of political considerations in order to marginalize the majority of citizens. Participants in the discussion about human rights sent out calls for strengthening and respecting human rights in Bahrain and honoring all the international human rights charters that Manama has signed. In addition, they called for creating an appropriate environment that protects human rights, especially in terms of the relations between the security institutions and the citizens.
In its first statement regarding the events in Syria, the UN Security Council condemned in the strongest terms the attacks by President Bashar al-Assad's loyalists on the US and French embassies in Damascus. In the Council's statement issued unanimously by all 15 members, the German ambassador to the UN, Peter Wittig, urged the Syrian authorities to protect diplomatic facilities and diplomats.
The members of the Security Council
condemn in the strongest terms the attacks against embassies in Damascus, which have resulted in damage to embassy premises and injuries to diplomatic personnel. The members of the Security Council recall the fundamental principle of the inviolability of diplomatic missions and the obligations on host governments, including under the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, to take all appropriate steps to protect embassy premises. In this context, the members of the Security Council call on the Syrian authorities to protect diplomatic property and personnel.
Syria was quick to respond to the Security Council's statement. Syria's UN ambassador Bashar Jafari accused the US and France of distorting and exaggerating the facts of the attack. Jafari said the protests were organized by some youths who wanted to express their opinion regarding the two embassies' interference in Syria's internal affairs. He indicated that some of the protesters who participated in the two incidents were arrested and will be brought to justice.
We deeply regret that the delegations of the United States of America and France have distorted and exaggerated the facts regarding yesterday's demonstrations, which were organized by some youth to express their views with regard to the interference in Syria's internal affairs by the embassies of the above-mentioned countries. Nonetheless, in keeping with the commitment of the government of the Syrian Arab Republic to respect its international obligations, law enforcement forces made every effort to ensure the safety of those embassies, including by deploying reinforcements to help protect the embassies and arresting some demonstrators who are currently being questioned and will be brought to justice.
The Libyan armed opposition is accused of abusing civilians. Human Rights Watch accused the revolutionaries, who were advancing toward the capital Tripoli, of burning and looting homes and abusing civilians. The organization said it witnessed some of these acts, interviewed witnesses, and talked with one of the revolutionaries' leaders about these violations. According to the rights group, the latest violation occurred last week as the revolutionaries were in the Nafusa mountains. The rebel fighters damaged property, burned some homes, looted from hospitals, homes and shops, and beat some individuals alleged to be al-Qaddafi supporters.
إلى الضفة الغربية الآن حيث استشهد شاب فلسطيني برصاص جنود إسرائيليين في
A Palestinian young man was killed by the gunfire of Israeli soldiers in Al Farah camp near Nablus in the northern West Bank. Martyr Ibrahim Sarhan was 21 years old and did not belong to any armed group, according to Palestinian security officials, who said occupation soldiers killed him as he was heading to the mosque. The soldiers were looking for an activist of the Islamic Jihad movement who was not arrested.
توقيفه.
أعلن وزير الداخلية المصري حركة تنقلات وترقيات وإنهاء خدمة داخل
The Egyptian Interior Minister announced a series of transfers, promotions and terminations of members of the ministry, the largest in its history. It includes nearly 4,000 officers, including 18 Major Generals and 19 Brigadier Generals, who will be dismissed over accusations related to the killing of protesters. This comes as protests continue in the Egyptian capital's Tahrir or Liberation Square for the 6th consecutive day, demanding the ruling military council speed up the reform measures demanded by the protesters.
This woman is a housewife and has never been to Tahrir Square before.
I implore you, the military decision, the military council, Field Marshal Tantawi, to make a quick decision. He has all the power in his hand. He holds everything in his hand. He can do anything in Egypt. Have mercy on Egypt's people. He saw everything and we don't want to suffer again. We don't want to suffer a second time. Enough already. Have mercy.
Many people here have the same demands. It is estimated that tens of thousands are also spread on side streets, which remain closed. The military council issued a statement to the protesters.
The armed forces are supported by the people's trust. Based on its national principles, it affirms that it will not tolerate the hijacking of power.
The protesters were quick to react.
He did not mention the martyrs' rights. He didn't mention anything about the prosecution of Mubarak, or whether he is indeed in Sharm el-Sheikh or not, as is being said. He did not mention Gamal and Ala Mubarak, or the trials on the former ministers. His entire speech did not address any of these issues.
The organizers say that this means the sit-in at the square will continue.
We are revolutionaries and we are protesters. Our protest is peaceful. The military council threatened us. The threat was within the statement, not a direct threat. His speech echoed in Tahrir Square, and we reject the threat even from the military council.
The atmosphere seems festive after one full day of protests that reached the Prime Minister's headquarters, only meters from here, to demand his ouster. As protesters say, the protests will continue to escalate until their demands are met, especially the demand for an urgent and open trial of former President Mohammed Hosni Mubarak. From above, Cairo appears calm at night. However, the situation on the ground is different. According to observers, the conflict now is between a military council that holds power and the thousands of protesters holding a sit-in at Tahrir Square, who hold revolutionary power and the media's interest, in addition to great popular support. Mustafa Al-Manshawi, BBC Cairo.
We
We open at the Knesset, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in the plenum after having been summoned by the opposition to address the controversial boycott bill. This follows the signed request of 40 MKs, a legal move that mandates the premier's appearance at the Knesset. Netanyahu defended the bill and said that Kadima had also supported the legislation in its original form. These developments come as a coalition of human rights organizations today announced plans to join the Gush Shalom Peace Group, which was the first to appeal the new law. The boycott bill passed Monday night after a lengthy and contentious Knesset debate and now permits the prosecution of any individual or group that calls for an economic, cultural, or academic boycott against Israel. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman today said that the High Court should not intervene in the Knesset's legislative process. He insisted that the law was a good one and that Israel could not ask others to stop boycotts if we do not do the same. But critics of the legislation claim that it severely violates freedom of expression and is anti-democratic. Attorney General Yehuda Weinstein will defend the bill before the High Court, but he declared his support for alterations proposed by the Justice Ministry to make it more proportionate. Opposition members are today charging that the passing of the Likud proposed boycott law has given right-wing legislators the green light to renew attempts to initiate a law that would permit parliamentary inquiry into the financial records of human rights and left-wing organizations. Likud member Dani Danon and Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman of the Israel Beitenu party announced that they will submit the issue for a Knesset vote next week. Hundreds of ultra-Orthodox protesters confronted police when they took to the streets of Jerusalem's Mea Shearim neighborhood this morning. They were protesting the presence of tax authority officials who arrived in the area to close an illegal slaughterhouse and arrest several senior Haredi officials who are suspected of tax violations. The demonstrators burnt trash cans and threw stones and bottles at security officers who tried to break up the protest with stun grenades and water hoses. 6 policemen were lightly injured in the clashes. 6 people were arrested. And joining us now in the studio is Jerusalem Post military correspondent Yaakov Katz to discuss the latest developments. Yaakov, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The Northern Command changed hands today, 5 years after the start of the Lebanon war. How do you assess our situation on that front?
Well, I think the 5 years that have passed speak for themselves. They've been the most quiet 5 years that Israel's known along the northern border. I think there have been 10 rockets that have been launched into Israel over the past 5 years, but not a single one by Hezbollah. Hezbollah is no longer seen along the border. They're not deployed along the border in the open. They're not operating like they used to be. And therefore, there's some success that we can walk away with even the past 5 years. But with that quiet that we have, there's no question that there's a massive, unprecedented military buildup in Lebanon. Hezbollah has tripled its rocket and missile arsenal. They've established their positions and command centers inside cities and villages. It's a major challenge, meaning that a future war would be all the more difficult.
Yaakov, what do you think will be the main priority of the new head of the Northern Command?
Well, I think that Yair Golan was a very well-experienced field commander and was, interestingly, head of the Home Front Command, which is supposed to prepare the country for the war that comes, now is going to be the commander of potentially future war. So he knows both sides of that coin. But I think that his main priority is going to be to retain the quiet, but also to prepare the IDF for the possibility of a new war. It means keeping the training going, getting the units to be at their highest level of readiness, and basically doing everything possible, though, at the same time to keep tensions down to a bare minimum so that a war won't break out due to some misunderstanding. There won't be a kidnapping like the one that happened on July 12, 2006. Regev and Goldwasser kidnapped, and that sparked the Lebanon War. Basically, to try to stave off a war, but at the same time be as prepared as possible for the next one that could come.
In Syria, where most foreign journalists have been expelled, citizen journalists are at the front line of the international media through their use of mobile phone cameras and social networking sites.
New media is being used in the battle against the Syrian regime. Syrian activists are gathering at this media center near the Turkish-Syrian border to collect anti-regime protest photos and video clips which reveal the measures taken by the Syrian government. They then upload them online to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Our goal in the beginning was just freedom, but now, at this moment, we want the downfall of the regime because the trust between us and the regime is gone.
Some of them put themselves in grave danger in order to film the turmoil with their cameras and mobile phones. Hussein saw his brother get killed by a gunshot as he was filming a protest.
I want to walk down the same path. I want to walk the way he did, along his side. I want to take his place and walk for him. I want to continue his path.
Nearly 30 people are working at this media center, most of whom are from Jisr al-Shugur, the town from which thousands of residents fled to Turkey due to the authorities' security operations. Shalil says he is a wanted man but vows to continue his work.
By merely conveying the scale of the crime to all the people, for them to see the truth of what is happening, we are activating and moving major powers in the world.
Concerned about pictures leaking from beyond its borders, the Syrian regime waged its own war by airing pictures that accuse the opposition of committing brutal acts.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs, programs which connect you to the world.